Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode, should I say, with Nora Jane. And today we have Claire with us. I'm super excited, as always, to interview Claire. I always get people on who have juicy topics to talk about. And this one really excites me because it's working with what we already have. So there's no extra work that we have to do. And I'm going to let Claire talk a little bit about who she is and what she does. And we're going to deep dive, as always, into the conversation tonight. So stay tuned. So welcome, Claire. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So can you tell everyone sort of what you do, who you are, and how you were called to your line of work now?
Yeah, sure. So I work with people largely around their career and their career choices and how they get that balance and how they stay passionate about what they're doing and maintain their energy levels. And so that can be me going into companies or working with private clients. So I do coaching, speaking at events, and facilitating groups and teams so that they can kind of find that essence and use it for themselves and teams as well.
And sort of what do you think is the essence of your work? So if you have a woman that comes to you and she needs guidance and direction with life, what's the essence of what you do? Is that sort of along the lines of what you do?
Yeah,
Or, yeah?
absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about that.
And I find the thing about women is that we're just so humble, or the way society kind of sets us up, that sometimes we're just last to think about ourselves. And so whether it's motherhood, whether you're a carer, whether you've got aging parents, whatever it is. And so we're trying to do the career and we're trying to have it all. And our energy just doesn't go that far. And so sometimes we don't spend that kind of introspective time thinking about what we want to do. But when we do, sometimes we make it really hard as well. So it kind of goes, I must, I should, all those things. Um, and so it's very much, for me, it's about not trying so hard. And it's about just steering people into more, probably very similar to your kind of training and nutrition and health, about what works already, what have you got going for you, what are kind of all the things that you can already tick off, and how can you build on that so you're coming from a really positive place to grow from, rather than the self-critical and kind of the milestones that seem possibly so far away. So that's very much part of it, and it's pretty much trying to find your superpower, which is something that I've been coaching and I've been working with women for 18 years, I think it is. And in that time, I hadn't quite realized until recently that actually that's just what I've been doing all of the time. It's just helping people find their superpower, which I would define as just what comes naturally, how they already inspire other people, what fires them up, so that almost effortlessly, kind of, when they're in the zone, when they're in flow, how can they find more of that? How can they bring it all together? How can they, even though other people might be able to see it and think it's completely obvious, we so rarely turn around to someone and say, you're just amazing at that, or do you know how good you are at that? Because if we look at someone and think they're naturally so good at something, we assume they know already, and we think they don't need to be told. So often we don't kind of get that feedback loop, and we don't hear how great we are. So it's very much about working out what you can tap into that already comes easily, and that you're already inspired by, and that you're already energized by. And that often normally means you're having an impact on other people in that way. And that's how it's easy to identify. So, for example, I had someone that I was working with who had real problems interviewing. She was brilliant at what she did. And this is the end of last year. And we worked together. And at the end of her program, she went to her husband, and they were standing in the kitchen. And she said, "Oh, I've been working with Claire, and we think we've got this thing where this is my superpower. Does that sound right?" And he was like, "Yeah." And he looked at her like, "What, you didn't know that?" And this is her husband, and she has 2 children with him and all this kind of stuff. And it's exactly what it's like. We just don't realize.
You said a lot there. I'm going to scale back, okay, because you had a lot of good stuff. So for somebody who comes back to find your superpower, you've got to be able to sort of have that relationship with self where you can identify what you're good at, what comes naturally, where the flow is. For a lot of the women that I work with, they struggle to find time or prioritize time for themselves. So step one, what is your advice with, because before you can even go into flow and finding superpowers and identifying what you're good at, is being able to have that introspective time, as you said. to spend with self and understand, okay, this is what I enjoy doing, this is what comes easy to me, this is what feels good. So how do you guide or coach people to be able to, in their busy lives, quote unquote, take that time that they need to spend on themselves, which, you know, you should be doing anyways, prioritizing self-care, which is, I think, is just a given in every day. But I'm going to stop talking and let you answer.
No, I completely agree. And when you're saying prioritizing self-care, it's a really well-used metaphor, but I just think it's the best one. It's that when you get on a flight and they say, before you help children or people that can't help themselves, put your oxygen mask on. And it's exactly that. And there's we struggle with, I'm sure you have these conversations, but we struggle with the whole self-care, that it sounds too much like being selfish, and how do we do that? But actually, how are you supposed to go and be anything to anyone else? How are you going to be the best for other people around you if you haven't already got the basic energy that you need to do that, and the space, and almost like the headspace to do that, to find your kind of sense of settled or peace or calm or whatever that is to you? So my step one is, if you already don't have dedicated time or activities that even give you self-care, even if you're not there at all yet, it's just to notice the moments where do you have aha moments. So for some people, they will give themselves the leisure time of having a 5-minute bath when the kids have gone to bed or whatever it is. Or sometimes people, not necessarily because they recognize it as self-care, it's because they feel they have to or whatever. They might go for a run, or they might go for a walk, or it might be on the walk back, you know, from the school run, or the drive back from the school run, or it could be they've had a meeting when we're allowed to be, you know, when we're out having meetings. It could be on the train, it could be on the tube, it could be when they're daydreaming on the escalator. It could be anything. When they have those moments of you think, oh, I just remembered that. If you're in that mental state where you have those moments of, oh, that's a good idea, I should tell my boss that, or oh, I need to do that, or I need to do that for my child, or that's a good idea. That really suggests to someone that that's when you're in a kind of stable moment. That's when your brain is kind of calm and quiet. So you've quietened down, that you're actually just open to hearing things, almost like hearing from our innate wholeness already, rather than it being pressure, because we almost strangulate things. We can overthink and go at a problem. We think we've got a problem. It's so easy to see things as problems, and we can just go at it. But what we do is we just strangle it, and we strangle the lifeblood out of it, and we don't get any answers. And it's just when we stood back, when are we reflective? So any moment when you're kind of reflective or just clear-minded, that might be an indication of the start of a self-care process, or identifying self-care moments that you can also fit into your normal schedule as well.
I like that. So it's almost not like having to tangibly say, like, from 6 to 7, this is my self-care. It's identifying those times in the day when your brain is sort of in a calm state, and maybe becoming more familiar with that time. And then you can sort of, I don't know, say, well, this is the time that I might block out for self-care. So then that takes, because I was going to ask you so for people who don't have those aha moments, so let's take busy moms who are just, you know, on the go and not sleeping, because I've got quite a few now with children who are not sleeping, and that's quite a tough stage, because you can't function. Like when you don't have, like when I don't sleep, I'm a beast. Like nothing works. So imagine having 2 children and, you know, household to run, and they're not sleeping, and they're just, from the time they get up to the time they go to bed, they're flat out. At the thought of taking time for themselves, it's just not conceivable to them. How do you guide them to get to that point, to even be able to recognize when they're having these little aha moments? How do you guide them to not feel guilty, to say, well, maybe you have too much going on and you do need to pull back before you know, carry on into this state of madness? So what's your advice with that?
I think it's really good to notice things where you are lost in the moment. And so you don't necessarily know it at the time, but sometimes, so like you say, you know, let's say you've had no sleep for a few nights. I'm like you, how we actually survive on the little sleep we get when we have children that won't sleep, that I have no idea, but it does often fall on the mums. And you just kind of, you just you're just going from one day to the next, aren't you? And you don't quite know how you've done it. But there's normally just a couple of moments before you fall asleep. And mums actually often find it, knackered people often find it harder to get to sleep as well, oddly. So those few moments when you're kind of thinking, oh, I've got to go to sleep, I've got to go to sleep, I've got to go to sleep. So you're not even relaxing when you're hitting the pillow.
Yeah, it's true.
Sometimes you can just reflect and think, right, okay, over the course of my day, when have I had moments where I have been processing stuff? So it might be when you were cooking, or it might be when, I don't know, you're putting out the washing, or you're folding the washing, or for those people that iron, it could be anything like that. Just as normally something mundane and routine, because you're not trying to fix anything. You're doing something almost subconsciously, which is why driving or having a shower, those kind of moments, and just think about them. And then it's about also just, this is going to sound odd to anyone that hasn't heard it before, listening with your body.
I like that. Okay,
because when we're stuck in our heads, it's big and cloudy and mechanical and like too many cogs spinning and everything's going really fast, but we're not going fast enough. And it just keeps driving us and driving us. But if you listen to your body, you kind of naturally slow down. And your body often has a lot of the answers. And when you can regulate your body, the knock-on effect of that is actually regulating your brain. And that's actually the basis of emotional freedom technique as well, and tapping.
Yeah.
And so it kind of uses the body to relax the brain. But I would say, listen to the parts of your body that hurt. Listen to the parts of your body that feel tired. And some people will say to you, just send gratitude to the parts of your body that are aching. So if you have had a chance to have a workout and you've really worked your glutes or whatever it is, and they're aching, thinking, well, kind of like, oh, I'm glad I had that opportunity. That's good. That's a good ache. We know that's a good ache. And if we are just knackered, it's like, well, at least I'm kind of knackered because, or I'm really exhausted because, I was caring for my child. And just that thing, it's just really taking it back to simple, because we're just so full of judgment on ourselves. And actually some of the basic things, it's about that kind of gratitude, if you like, of just acknowledging what you have achieved and acknowledging where are those moments of absolute simplicity.
Talking about light bulb moments, can I scale it back? So you said that, so I asked you about the self-care and getting into flow, and I'm taking notes as well, so from my head, because you're saying a lot of good stuff. Getting into flow and trying to find those aha moments in the days when you're not trying to fix anything. And I found that that's quite powerful, simple but powerful and true, because a lot of the times, like, we always I don't know, I'm like that, like, because I'm a perfectionist, which I know is not a good thing. So it's not like I'm saying, oh, like, some people like are thrilled that they're perfectionists, but I know it's not a good thing. And it's always like you are always trying to fix things. You are always trying to, like, what's the next thing I need to improve or get better on or add into my agenda, or show up as being a better version of myself, when actually there's nothing to fix. So when you look at things just as as they are, then you take that pressure and that stress, I guess, and that strain off of the brain to just be able to just think how it should. So that was I really like that, because I think as women we are always trying to fix things, aren't we?
And also when we're caring for other people, we're planning. And particularly if you're a perfectionist, you'll know this. It's kind of like, you want to make it right, you want to make it good, you want to make it the absolute best you can. And we're going at it as if this is the last chance to make that perfect. So therefore, it's got to be, and it comes down to me, and I must do it all. And that makes it hard to delegate and hard to lean on other people, because and I'm trying to do my best. So who am I to ask other people for help? I should be able to do this on my own. There are so many stories we have going on, but actually, that's all in the future. All our fears and our concerns are all about the future. But we're living now. We're not living yesterday. We're not living tomorrow. We're living just right now, and all we have to get right is right now. And we're built for this. So, and the people that have got children, young children in particular, will absolutely relate to this. You look at a baby, and as long as a baby isn't uncomfortable, as in unwell or hungry or needs changing or, you know, or has too much sunlight in his eyes, whatever it is, a baby's happy and a baby's just taking in the moment or wondering at how come its hand moves and it didn't realize that could happen and all of those kind of things. And they're just marveling at life and they're completely accepting of themselves and what's going on around them. And in that moment, they can be brilliant. And that's how they learn how to do all the things that they learn to do, and amazingly quickly. And in some ways, things slow down because their heads are not fueled with loads of other thoughts. So it's almost like the whole thing of, you know, we also try to multitask. And we know the science tells us what the brain cannot multitask. We can try and do lots of things, but we can't do any of those particularly well. So it's almost like, what if we can just accept that we have everything we need? We have this human brilliance and we have everything for us, for you, Leonora, for me, Claire, as an individual. Right now, we have everything we need. It's not to say we're going to have easy times. Everyone has their, you know, trials and tribulations. Everyone has their difficulties. It's a roller coaster. We have our highs, we have our lows, we have our joys, we have our sadness. But we're built to cope. And humans before us have coped, and we manage, and we still have those brilliant experiences, and we have some sad experiences which make us stronger. But we behave as if we have to create some process that has to be different or fresh or new or a better version of ourselves. Well, how about we're just fine as we are? And if we just take that we're okay as we are and we build from there, so how can I do the best I can? That is so much of a more self-care, self-accepting, and a more powerful conversation to have with the self than it is to say, I'm not good enough.
I love that so much. I think that actually is the essence of self-care. I am enough as I am. I love that because that just takes so much pressure off. But here's my caveat. So a conditioned mind, right? How do you, I think you know what I'm going to ask you already. How do you, so you can have a day where you're like, okay, fine, right? I'm going to stay in the present. I'm not going to think about tomorrow. I'm not going to think about yesterday. I'm going to just focus on now. I'm going to feel good now. And then something happens to rock the boat and you're back to square. How do you set up an infrastructure to support that frame of mind? Because I think that's very empowering. And if you can have that belief and really intricately believe it, right, in who you are, really feel it like you want, because it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to actually believe it. So when you set yourself up to believe that as I am, I'm enough, I don't need to change, whether I've had a baby and my body is different, because that's a big thing with a lot of people now, their bodies have changed and they're finding it really hard to like even look in the mirror and love what they see. But as they are enough because you've just carried a baby for 9 months and that's a whole feat in and of itself, right? But anyways, how do you set up your environment, your mind to withstand external pressures, right? So that you're not swayed to go back into wanting to change and wanting to, you know, be different, be anything but what you are, and to continue to focus on the present. So what are some hacks around that? What do you do to keep yourself, you know, centered and, okay, something's happened, it's fine, everything's okay. What do you do?
I think there's two questions in there that I'm hearing.
Yeah.
One is, what do you do to kind of stay centered, settled, calm, and in those moments? And the second one is, how do you get away from external pressures that can make you feel rough or that can make you feel...
Yeah, think about family or friends. Or what?
Or I heard it the other day called comparitis, comparing ourselves to things, comparing ourselves to the standards on, you know, the pictures on Instagram or whatever it is, or the body that bounced back in 6 weeks, whatever it is. And so I'm going to take that one first. From the comparison perspective, or from I should look like this, then, like you say, you've just baked a baby for 9 months. Your body has gone through some phenomenal changes, and I hate to kind of burst anyone's bubble. You're going to hit menopause from 45 onwards, and it's going to happen all over again, and for the majority of women. And so we go through these constant changes. And the thing is, I do think there's very much about you have to choose what you're exposed to. So, for example, people that are following you in terms of nutrition and fitness and whatever, they're finding out helpful things that they can grasp and the little bits they can fit in, and so that they can improve how they want to improve. Filling their Instagram feed of people who they want to look like, who have lifestyles absolutely nothing like theirs, or may have not had some of the experiences they had, is probably not going to help. And just like you have to be really careful. I don't know if you do this, but I'm really careful about what do I experience first thing in the morning. So, for example, when Donald Trump came into power, I decided that I was not going to watch the news. I would listen to radio news because you only get a snapshot. I was not going to watch him. I did not want him in my life because I didn't like him. And that was just my preference. But it could anybody, anything that gives you that impact, they've already kind of stolen part of your brain first thing. And first thing I'm not a morning person particularly, but first thing in the morning is often when most people's brains are more receptive to new ideas, new information. It's also where your will is most likely to get broken if you have a good intention for the day. So if you fill it full of bad stuff or comparison or things that make you feel bad or things that make you feel worried, then that's not going to help your general energy level before you've even gone in the shower. Once you've kind of fed the baby, whatever, and you're going in the shower and get yourself dressed, which as a mum sometimes can be mid-morning and you don't have as much time as you would like to. Even if you can find your lipstick or whatever before you leave the house, whatever that is, we've all been there. And so I think that's really important, is what do you expose yourself to? And it's so easy, particularly, this is the weird one, particularly when we're feeling stressed. So, for example, when I was homeschooling last year, obviously not a barrel of laughs, it's really easy to get into your phone. It's really easy to escape into social media. But how does social media actually help you it's a distraction, yes. It helps you procrastinate, yes. But it can either fill you full of fear, or it can make you compare yourself to somebody else. And so, or it might do something else for you. But it's just about understanding. It's probably just looking over your days and going, well, what really energizes me? What doesn't? Am I really serving myself? Which is, again, going back into the self-care. What would my best friend tell me to do? And women are such good routers for their friends, for their sisters, for their mothers, for the women in their lives. We're such brilliant team players. And I was hearing something earlier today that about how women are not as individually competitive as men. But for other women, they're brilliant. In a team, women are brilliantly competitive. So we really are brilliant cheerleaders for other people, but we need to be cheerleaders for ourselves first. Because if we break our spirit by mid-morning, then that sets the tone up for your whole day. And that's another point, is about just see it as one day at a time, or you just have to get through the next hour. Then you just have to get through to the next meal provision for your child, maybe, if that's how your day feels like at the moment. I've been doing meal planning for children for over 10 years now, and I love cooking, but it does kind of take it out of you, doesn't it? So the whole family meal plan. And you just get through and just get through the next thing. Do your best that you can at the next thing. And if it isn't how you wanted it to turn out, then okay, you'll endeavour to learn from that and do better next time. And particularly for mums, because as we know, you think you've nailed kind of how to change a nappy, or how to do something with a bottle, or breastfeeding, or maybe you've just managed to kind of get your stomach to even listen to the concept of a sit-up, let alone do one. You can actually feel the nerve endings in your stomach now. Then next day, you try and build on that. It's about celebrating what's already going on. And so just it is kind of gratitude, but it's also knowing that you're normal. We all think we're not normal, but by the fact that you and I know lots of women have the same conversations, we are normal. We just have our own little versions of normal, and our bits of normal don't happen at the same time as someone else's normal. But it's much more normal than not normal. And so it's just being forgiving. I think we can be really unforgiving, and that's really important. just to take that care. So did I actually answer the questions? So the one was the getting rid of the comparitis and making sure that you are careful where you put your attention, being really conscious about where you put your attention. That was the first one.
And then external perspectives. This is what I have down. I think you've answered. I think you've answered it. Because I don't remember, to be honest, the first one, because you said so much there. I honestly don't remember my first one, but I like that. I think setting up. I think the most powerful thing I've taken away is setting yourself up for your day, and deciding what you're going to let into your day, so that your energy is it's in the direction that you want to be in. You know, it's not in the direction, but you're sort of bringing that energy into your day so that you can steer yourself in the direction that you want to be in. So now that person has created their environment by deciding, you know, this is taking things day by day, being forgiving to yourself, practicing the gratitude, not comparing, deciding what they're going to put into their I don't watch the news, right? I realized recently I needed to start watching the news because I just was a bit ignorant to some things. So I just find it so, the energy thing is I like that, because I find it so depressing. Literally, like, not as in I feel depressed, but it depresses me into, it brings my energy down. And you hear it, because you never have, I know there's a thing now where there's like good news channels, but like very rarely do you ever hear anything positive on the news. And you find that, and I think a really good thing to do off the back of what you've said is to look at, for example, if you're on social media. I was never on TikTok, and I have to like really watch myself on it now, because I can easily spend 2 mindless hours on there. And I feel so angry at myself. And then it's that whole thing like, oh my God, like you could have been doing this for 2 hours, and you could have been working on a business for 2 hours, and you're on TikTok, like wasting your life, you know. But it's that, like, you know, when you're so tired, not knowing how to switch off, and like, you know, not knowing how, even like a Thai person, not knowing how to relax. So being aware of how you feel after doing and watching and being around certain people or watching certain things, and then knowing if that feeling serves you or not. And then that's a really good guide as to, okay, this needs to be removed from my experience so that the rest of my day is set up well. So that all makes sense. So now you were talking about after you do that, trying to understand what your superpower is. So how do you guide somebody when they find their aha moments? I might be okay with this, I might be okay with that. How do you guide them into actually recognizing what's the process with finding your superpower?
Okay, so what I get people to do is, and you don't have to sit down and do it. You don't have to do this in a dedicated fashion. It doesn't have to be another thing on the to-do list. You could just kind of put on the fridge or on the back of the bathroom door, whatever it is. Just stick a piece of paper and just think about what comes easily. And that can sound really strange, but for example, I used to have a flatmate that said, I've never known anyone that can take no ingredients from a cupboard and make a whole meal. And I had no idea. And I had another friend, I'll tell you a story. I was asking people about what could they, I did a self-development course years ago. And one of the homeworks was go away and ask people, what can they count on you for? What can they rely on you for? And what can't they rely on you for? And this is just a brilliant exercise. It's the kind of thing you can have if you're out with mum mates having coffee with babies, or if you're on your, you know, you're standing waiting for your fitness club to start, whatever it is, you can have this kind of conversation as fun. And you can share it with friends and just be prepared to answer it back when they say, well, they want you to reciprocate, because it's a really generous thing to do. And my friend said to me, he was really dapper, fantastically brilliant gay guy, but he was just so well dressed. He was just enviable. And I said, what can you count on me for? And he said, you always know a man who can. You just know people. You know people that can help. And I was like, oh, okay. I said, and what can't you count on me for? And he said, oh, that's easy, darling. He said, fashion advice. And so you hear some absolutely, like, literally, I just thought it was the funniest thing. I was like, that's just absolutely coming from him. It just had such class. It was amazing. It was so funny.
That's funny.
But it's a really good one. It's because what happens is there are things like, I didn't know that I could network. So this is before I actually then had a job networking, and I do, like, you network for business or whatever. But I didn't know that. I had no idea that I naturally networked, and that I was very well kind of connected with people that could help other people. And so there might be things that, you happen to be an amazing listener, and that's sometimes people underestimate that as the skill that it is, because one of the things that we crave more, certainly now, as this very distractible, busy human beings, we crave more than ever someone just to listen to us wholly, purely, in the moment, and just give us that space. So yeah, finding out what people count on you for, and ask them and say, what do you mean by that? If they say, oh, well, if there's ever a family event, you're the first person we ask for the ideas because you'll know what's appropriate. And say to them, so, well, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? Because there's something in that. And it might mean that actually you're the guardian of the family, but you didn't realise, or that you have leadership skills that you didn't realise. And these things, they normally translate just as they may have translated at work, if you're not back at work yet, or you've had a baby or whatever. They translate as much as home. And so you'll hear it. You just have to keep asking the question, what does that mean? What do you mean by that? Give me examples. What else would you call it? What are those qualities? And so that's a really good starting point. And you can just jot those down on a piece of paper. And likewise, the things that come easily. So if you kind of, you get 5 minutes to yourself to go to the toilet or go to the shower, or, you're doing something really mundane, and you just kind of go, oh yeah, this is really easy. So it might be, so for example, I discovered I have really strange spatial awareness. I can parallel park a car really, really easy. I can reorder cupboards, and people say that won't go in there, and I'll go, just watch me. My freezer's packed full. It seems like a really useless talent to have, but people have those kind of things, and they don't realize until someone else points out. So when someone says to you, how did you do that? Then you want to listen and to yourself and go, well, what is it they just asked me? Why did they ask me? Because women are so dismissive about themselves, and they will turn around and go, what this? It's a bit like saying, oh, Leonora, you just look amazing. It's like, oh, what, this thing I got in the charity shop, or this thing that I got off the sale rack. And it's like, don't do that. Don't do that. It's like someone just said you made a brilliant choice of what you're going to wear or something. It's the same thing with talent. We're very quick to kind of deflect it rather than say, oh, what do you mean? Or why is that special? Keep the conversation open to find out, because certainly if you're kind of exhausted, knackered, going through quite a life change, adjusting to your new person, who you are, it's really nice to hear the comforting things that you can naturally fall back on that make you feel good about yourself.
I like that. That's a confidence hack as well, like learning to, like, the art of giving and receiving. So exactly that, somebody can say, oh, you look really nice today, and like you did it to me when we were speaking, right? And I was talking about makeup, and I just didn't take it. It's like being 100%, it's like being able to take a compliment and not feeling like you have to hand it back, or you're not worthy of receiving that. Okay, so another question. So now somebody's discovered their superpower. What do you do with it? What can they do with it? Obvious things like career. But for a woman who is not going to go back into work right now, because these are some of the women on my group who need to find out what they're good at. What are their options when they find their superpower? Because you've listed quite a few different things that are not traditionally the norm, right? Which I like, because it doesn't have to be anything magnificent. It could just be simple things. So it takes that pressure off of having to find anything that's like, superbly different. Normalcy is okay. What do they do with those superpowers?
Well, let's take it back just 1 minute. So it might be that there are a few of these things that actually join up to make their superpower. So when they discover these things, it's just worth just jotting them down. And again, not forcing it, just sitting with it. So just see when you've got a list and just look at it kind of really without any pressure, just kind of go, oh, what does that mean? Because it often just looks like a bit of a jigsaw of loads of different factors. But there might be something that there's a thread through it, there's a theme, something that kind of sews through, which is, it might be people, it might be how you handle information, it might be how your mind is logical. So I do mixed martial arts, and I'm like the grandma of the group. But there's a girl there that is in her 30s. She's almost 30, and she can just pick up. I'll say, how do you remember? They tell us to do this routine or some, disabling sequence or whatever it is, and she'll straight away, she'll be able to say, no, we do this with our hand, we do this with our foot, we move this way. I'm like, you've seen it once. How do you know that? And that's her talent. She says, I see everything with logic. And so if this was her, she would see that probably the things that she does are all, there's a pattern. She sees patterns of logic. And they're the things that help her learn. And they're the things how she helps other people. So I'd say certainly keep looking for threads, looking how things, joining up the dots, looking for those. And then when you've got a sense of it, just kind of sit with it and start to notice where else it shows up. And start to think, well, where have I done that before? Where have I, or how does it relate to when I've received a compliment? How does it relate to my pride moments? So really think about what are the things that are your proudest moments, are the things that you've achieved. And sometimes the little ones that you wouldn't necessarily hail to other people, but they happen to be really meaningful to you. So when you've got that and you're beginning to develop a sense, and anybody can contact me if they're, if they're struggling with it and thinking, I'm not getting anywhere, or I found a few, but I'm not quite sure what the thread is, then we can just have a quick chat, or I can message people and give them a bit of a steer. I always say, whatever happens, don't get stuck. Just keep moving with it. Keep playing with it. It's a bit like a plasticine or Play-Doh. And you just keep molding it, or clay that kids like playing with. Just keep playing, because something comes up. And the first conclusion that you have may not be the conclusion that fits the best. It may not feel like a big light bulb moment or anything like that, but it could be as simple as listening. It could be logic. It could be caretaking. It could be planning. It could be anything like that. But the thing to really notice is on a scale of, say, 1 to 10, how easy do you feel about it? And if it's the kind of thing that you take really for granted, almost to the point that if someone said to you, that's a real talent of yours, and you would be dismissive about it, that's a really good sign that it's your superpower, because you don't value it, because you underestimate the value of it to other people, because you probably had access to it all your life. And it's somewhere, if you were to look back at all the events over your life, it's probably in there within your success strategy, but you didn't realize.
Yeah, that's actually quite a powerful thing, because it sort of, as we've been having this conversation, for some reason, I keep going back to people who are like doctors and lawyers and who followed the trajectory that has been set out by family expectations, right? And I don't know in your experience if this has happened, but a lot of the times people may be unfulfilled with what they're doing. And because they've been in a certain type of career for so long, maybe one that has a lot of prominence around it, having a superpower that just has always been there that you might be dismissive of because it's nothing great, that's a mindset shift, isn't it? Because you have to sort of be willing to move away from what doesn't fulfill you. It's acknowledging that this particular superpower can be what brings the essence of life to me. Have you worked with people like that before?
Yeah, because we change our careers normally on average or something. I think it's about 3 or 4 times now in our lifetime. And obviously lots of life events make us rethink what we want and how much energy we want to dedicate to the thing that brings us in money or whatever it is, or the exchange for time, money and freedom that we do. So yes, often people, like you say, they don't want to be held by the boundaries that they have experienced before, but also what you were touching on about almost a profession, and professions probably do this more than other jobs, I would say, what we know as the traditional professions. They kind of superimpose a certain personality with it as well. And without wanting to overly bring gender into it, it's often because it was set up by men for men. And so we're trying to be masculine.
That's part of the conversation, right? That's so true, yeah.
But we're not masculine.
Feminine energy, yeah.
So our lives are much more fluid. Our hormones go like this throughout our lives. Men's kind of do that.
Yeah.
So when you get to kind of my age, women start getting less tolerant and grumpy because your estrogen levels are dropping. And then guys kind of go, oh, they're really grumpy. It's like, no, you've been grumpy all your life. We've just started. And so that's kind of what happens later. So it's about taking, it can be a lot about taking the masculine, the masculinity is often very scientific. I'm not suggesting scientific professions are masculine at all. Scientists or whatever, amazing people. But what I'm saying is there's the masculinity behind it that makes it very precise, very accurate, very pigeonholed, very boxed in. And a lot of us just don't operate like that. We have all of these identities that make us up as a person. So every single relationship we have means we have a different sub-identity. So I am not, when I'm being the sister, I'm not the same as when I'm being the mother, or when I'm being a lover, I'm not the same as I am being the daughter, whatever it is. And again, of none of those I won't replicate any of those when I go to work. And neither will I when I'm being a coach, or when I'm being a facilitator, or when I'm being a public speaker, or when I'm talking to you like this. Because it all depends on your audience. It all depends on who you're trying to build rapport with. And women are much more emotionally receptive to the other people they are dealing with. And so they're probably more likely to have more of those individual personalities alongside it. So here's the thing, and I'm just going back to kind of how do you do that if you've got this kind of persona? Then it's just knowing you're still that person. You haven't lost anything. Because we're grieving it. We're almost, and I had a really good definition of grief the other day. Grief is love that hasn't found its new place to go yet. I'll say that again. Grief is love that I think it was grief is love that hasn't found its new home yet. And I loved that. But it works the same in terms of when we're shedding an old skin almost. So yes, we may not be in our profession anymore in the same capacity. We might be on maternity leave. We might have gone down or be heading towards reduced hours. We might be thinking, how do I fit? Crikey, now we're all, regardless of what you're doing, people are thinking, I might be working half the time from home, whatever it is. And we do have a sense of loss, of grief, because it's a shift, it's change. And so every time something passes, we get that sense of, I'm losing something, but actually you're not. It's just that something is behind you. It can still serve you. We can often much more easily go backwards than we can forwards. It's just taking it with you and growing and being able to be fluid. If anything, like you're saying, things like motherhood or whatever it is, they just prove to you how flexible you can be, how determined, how your ability to dig deep at that stage is so pertinent that you don't see it at the time, but when you look back over the last year or a few months, you think, wow, if someone had said to you, you're going to, get to Friday and you'll have survived on 3 hours sleep a night and you still managed to go and do this, that, and the other, and you haven't crashed the car or you haven't left the baby behind on a train or whatever it is, you kind of think, really? So it's about being able to be much more appreciative of how fluid life is. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to give up, is that, no, you can't do things in the same way you could before, or when you had those responsibilities or that identity, or you were within that framework. But it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be about how can you take those best parts of your personality, and to some extent, it is a bit like a life hack. It is a bit like a get around. It's like, well, where does my superpower fit? So for example, the lady with the listening skills and interviewing. So her view was, I'm a mum, I want to work part-time, but in my profession at that level, and I want to go and interview convincingly, but I don't really like doing all the talking, and I don't like being kind of really brash and confident about myself. Although I am confident, I don't like having to talk about it. And we worked on how she can just use her listening and interviewing to the best of her ability. And she pulled it off, and they thought she was marvelously engaging because she was using her superpower. And so it's about harnessing it. It's weird because, and you and I touched on this on an earlier conversation, is that we look for our nuggets, if you like. We look at for our appreciation. We look at for our sense of self-belief and our identity outside. We look for the outside world to give us approval, the outside world to give us definition, the outside world to tell us who we're supposed to be. That's not how it is. How about we're just fine how we are? The person you are, it doesn't matter how many different identities you morph through in your lifetime. When you're a grandma or you're an old lady, killing people, making them laugh, making hilarious jokes about, you know, the coronavirus pandemic or whatever it was, how you got through, you're the same person that you are now. You've just developed, with everything you've done, you've developed more confidence that's enabled you to say some really funny jokes about it looking backwards. You're absolutely the person you're supposed to be now. So rather than us giving all of our attention out there to other people, to benefit other people, part of the self-care thing is just to sit quietly and just settle and go, okay, because a lot of women brilliantly tap into their intuition if they can just quieten down. If they can just...
Can we tap into that? You talked about feeling things in your body. So I'm quiet because so much of what you're saying, I love. But you talked about feeling things in your body. So let's talk about that as it links into intuition and the whole superpower thing, because I think that's quite important, you know, bringing the body into what you're doing, because it is sort of a gauge to guide, right? But a lot of the times we don't use that, and we let the external things dampen that voice and bring a lot of doubt around that. So you talked about EFT and intuition. Do they link, and how do they work within this process?
Yeah, okay. So for EFT, so emotional freedom technique, of which is tapping is a technique, is about tapping on the acupuncture points, the acupressure points, which are normally they're kind of from the collarbone up and kind of on the hand. And when you're doing EFT, you tap on these points and you have a little bit of a script, normally working with someone, or you can follow a script, you can find them online, or someone can ask me and I can guide you to some. And what you do is you express the problem as an accepted problem. And once it's accepted and the body, the tapping on the body, stimulates the better parts of the nervous system that work in our favor, and so the good hormones and the hormones that reduce the cortisol and things like that, and the stress hormones, it's almost like a seesaw. It goes from us being kind of really stressed to kind of balance us out again. And then when we're balanced out again, the amygdala here, the reptilian part of the brain that does the fight or flight response, which is overstimulated when we think we're struggling, that quietens down to allow us that our prefrontal cortex, the problem-solving part of the brain, which is a very advanced, more modern part of the brain that develops, but it causes us all of our problems because it's the bit that causes us to overthink. That quietens down too, and it does what it's supposed to do in a good capacity. It starts to help us to just naturally join the dots to find the solutions to the problem. So that's a very, very succinct way of explaining emotional freedom technique. But what it does is it connects the mind and body, in answer to your question. So in terms of listening to your body, often what happens is a lot of the things that we do with our head and our overthinking, that stimulates stress, and then stress takes hold in parts of the body. So a lot of the digestive disorders, IBS, all of those kind of things, they're very much a stress disorder. And a lot of people hold stress in different parts of their body, but a lot of people have it in the digestive area. And so what this does is it's the opposite of that process. Rather than the stress going into the body, it's sending calm from the body up to the brain so that you're not getting the stress, you're stopping it. You're stopping it in its tracks before it kind of manifests into something else. In terms of listening to your body, if you are just standing by the kettle waiting for the kettle to boil, or you're waiting to heat up milk, or you're stirring something to feed your child, or you're doing something that is just, you have to be there. Or if you're feeding your baby, you know, feeding your baby is a perfect time. If you're feeding your baby, rather than saying listening to something or being overstimulated, whatever, just kind of take those moments and think, right, how does my body feel? Other than, let's say, you know, your arm's aching, or, you know, whatever. Just think, how does my body feel? Where does my body feel relaxed? And where does my body feel tense? Another way of doing it, which serves two purposes, it tells you about your body, but it also relaxes you, is to just start with your toes and just concentrate on your toes, then concentrate like on the ball joint of your foot, and then concentrate on your heel, and then your ankle, and then go all up the different parts, as many parts as you want, and go through the flow of your whole of your body, right up to your hair, so you can almost feel like kind of the bit where you would massage in your shampoo, and just almost just feel it, and just feel, how does my body feel? And just notice it and acknowledge it. And often that kind of raises your mood, brings stress levels down. It gives you a really lovely sense of calm. But also in doing that, you might think, oh yeah, my calf is a bit tight. And it might be just that you're sitting in a certain position, particularly when you're caring for, you know, for a little one or whatever. We can find ourselves caught in knots, or we're sitting uncomfortably or whatever, because we're not putting ourselves first. But just by paying attention to our body, it is a form of self-care, but it calms that part of the brain down that makes everything else look simpler, look a bit clearer, just to give us that little bit of energy to kind of see how, right, what have I got to do next? It sounds too simplistic, I know, but it's just by getting your attention out of your head, by listening to your body. And also sometimes you can identify something. So for example, Leonora, do you know where you hold stress in your body? Where do you get tense? Sorry? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? No.
Go on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, I squeeze my butt. I hold it in my butt. I squeeze. I clench.
Also, you clench tight. Okay, right. So
it's so weird. I was just telling them like, "Ooh, my butt's tight."
Wow. So that's secretly there's a good side effect of that, though, isn't there? Kind of like, you know.
I wish.
Yeah. So you'll notice when you're doing that, and what it does is it tells you that you're getting tense. It says, okay, and you don't even have to examine why you're getting tense. You don't have to go then give yourself a hard time. It's so easy to go, oh, I'm feeling tense. Well, I shouldn't be feeling tense, so I'll just slap myself about now for feeling tense too. It's like, no, don't do that. Just acknowledge, just go, okay, I'm feeling tense, so therefore I need to acknowledge I have been trying to do something hard, or something is bothering me. That's okay. And that's also going back a bit to what you were saying about, well, you know, you can have all of these thoughts and you can have all this stuff and this jumble and that's hard and you can't get rid of it. What do you do with it? The best thing is to, and it takes a lot of mastery to do it. It just takes practice. For some of us more than others. It's just to notice that they're just thoughts. Almost like an observer. It's like, it's just a thought. So I'm giving myself a hard time. Oh, okay. Just get curious. The best way I can describe it is, or I've heard it described is, just get curious about it. It's like, oh, okay. I'm giving myself a hard time. And then you can always laugh at yourself and go, oh, well, that's really helpful, isn't it? Because me giving myself a hard time and me getting myself all kind of more worked up and not being able to see clearly through it, well, that's really going to help me solve the problem, isn't it? So, you know, we can be really funny with ourselves sometimes. And I've also heard it described as almost like getting on the train. So it's almost like, okay, there's that rubbish thought and there's that rubbish thought. And it's almost like a train that you're standing on the station. It's like, well, there's that rubbish thought. Okay, do I want to get on that train? No, not really. Okay, it'll pass.
God.
Oh, do I want to get on? Okay, yeah. So I'm feeling you know, I feel like my body's really letting me down because my stomach is just not going back. And I don't even know what to wear. And now I'm dressing around my stomach and all of those kind of things, or whatever it is, or you know, my baby won't settle. Why aren't I getting my baby to settle? It's like, okay, it's just a thought. It'll pass. Because the beauty is, we're kind of permanent for the amount of time that we're on the planet, if you like. We're permanent. And who we are and our identity is unique to us, to each individual. We all kind of hold this shiny human essence, but we're all unique and individual. But those thoughts, they're all temporary, just like everything in life is temporary, whether it's love, whether it's grief, or whether it's joy, whether it's excitement, whether it's sadness, tears, whatever. Everything is temporary. And so they're just moments and they're temporary. There is no way, even if you tried to, if I said to you now, think of, think of a pink pig flying past your window.
Yeah, I did
You
it.
can remember that for now because it's distinctive, but you're not going to be able to hold that thought. Something else is going to pop into your head, and then another thing will pop into your head. And it's just, if nothing else, it's just remembering. My favorite thing is just to remember that everything is temporary, because it just reduces our attachment to it. It reduces its hold on us, and it reduces the either animosity or the pressure to some degree, because it's not going to be there tomorrow, not in the same capacity. It will have a different form.
That's very comforting. You've said a hell of a lot of light bulb moments there. So tapping into your body, seeing where you hold. I like the train analogy a lot. Deciding that is something that I'm going to be doing. So I'm taking that and like 100% using that, because that's brilliant, really brilliant. Doing all of that allows you to then listen to the thoughts that you're having and then being able to trust. So let's wrap up with that. How do you trust yourself? How do you trust that your intuition is right for somebody who hasn't? Because sometimes I still doubt. I know it's right, but I still doubt. So how do you, but I'm working on that.
Okay.
And I know why. Yeah. So how do you trust?
I suspect we spend our lifetimes working on it, but we just might get it better as it each time. And because what we find we do a lot is we'll berate ourselves, go, oh, I knew that was wrong. I knew I had a hunch. And then you tell yourself off for not listening to it. Whereas actually, you're just better off going, okay, the next time that happens, I have just learned that my hunches are a really good thing. So most of us have had a hunch at some point about our child, or about not to put pressure on ourselves or our body or something, or we've been in a situation where we're uncomfortable and we knew we should have got out and we didn't. And it's that hunch, or you're in a job interview or you're in a professional conversation and you're thinking, I should have said something right then. I knew I should have done, and I didn't, and I missed my moment. And then either someone else stole my glory, or the moment's passed. And there's different things that can happen. One is you can still use your intuition. So you, rather than going, oh no, the moment's gone, so what? Create your own moment. Don't lose your intuition. What's the worst that's going to happen? Someone's not going to like it. Well, this isn't but you're not here for the popularity contest. You're here to live your life the best way you can in this moment. And so if your intuition, if you've got a hunch about something and you can feel it in your chest, or you can feel it in your stomach, or you can feel it in your heart, you can normally feel it somewhere. And again, that's listening to your body. There's normally a power that goes with it. There's normally something that kind of, there's something stronger than just the brain that goes with these things. And so one is to follow it. Don't go into the telling yourself off about, just go, no. Go back to that person, retrace your steps, go back to the person and say, I'm really sorry, I should have said this to you. Because it might be a really life-changing moment, either for them or for you. It might be a gift for them, or it might be something that's really amazing that's going to happen to you as a result. If you don't do it, you're never going to know, but you might regret it. So that's one. And the other thing is to just notice, and this comes down with the settling and the slowing down. So when you're feeling a hunch, when you're noticing something, just slow right down. And the way I find I can do that is I can almost take an in-breath and almost direct it down to the back of my throat. I think everyone's is probably a bit different of how they can settle, or how they can settle their body, but how you can almost really slow down. I've only recently discovered that's kind of a trick that really works for me. But other people can just do, in breath, 1, 2, 3, out through the mouth, out breath, 1, 2, 3. And because you can't really think of other stuff while you're doing that, while you're thinking about counting your breathing. And then because it's intuition, you'll feel it somewhere. It'll tell you something. And you'll either feel, oh, no, it's just thought, gonna let it go, might come back to it later. Or you're gonna think, oh yeah, it's still there. I can still feel it in my stomach, or I can still feel its excitement in my chest. Oh, there's a hunger here. I need to do something with it. And I think it's about the more and more you listen to those moments, the more and more you see them, the more and more you notice them, the more you can use them, the more that you trust them. And that's where, again, it goes back to almost like when you've had professional identity and you've had all these rules, and, you know, when you're learning to be a professional, you don't really question it too much. You do as you're told because you're learning the ropes, and you do what your boss told you, and you know that's your key to success is do more of what your boss told you. Well, now you're not. Now you're starting to listen to yourself, and you're starting to follow your own path. This is part of that process. So whether it's leadership, management, planning, whatever it is, they all come from good hunches. They all come from you. We innately know what is right. We know what's right. We know how to love children. We know how to be kind. We know how to have love and understanding. It's about having more love and understanding for ourselves. And just to think, what if I'm the answer? What if I'm my answer? Rather than thinking everyone out there has the answer. All this information, Google. Why are we operating our lives by Google? We don't need it. So we have the answers. It's just about listening to ourselves that little bit better. And we need the brain to calm down, and all the chatter and all the judgment, all other things, just to kind of settle a little bit so that we can hear that intuition trying to come through. And it can save us an awful lot of effort, because if you know you're on the right route, you're not spending all of that time on the over questioning and, you know, the examining and the analyzing and the stuff that actually raises our stress levels. Because if you're on the right route and you're giving it your best shot on the right route, then you just feel a bit more settled about it. And that's also where your superpower sits.
I was going to wrap up with that 100%. I feel like I've just been coached. I've never been this quiet ever interviewing anybody, because I'm just taking it in. Swear. Usually, no, I just usually have loads of questions, but like you've just shared so much. So for people who want to carry on the conversation with you, or maybe want to reach out for coaching or to get more advice, what are your social media handles? Do you have a website? Do you have any programs that they can join?
Okay, so the website is Wildfire. So my company is called Wildfire. So it's Wildfire @ work, WORK. And the Twitter and Instagram handles are Wildfire Spark. Probably because I couldn't get Wildfire, so I just called it Wildfire Spark. But it's Wildfire Spark. Or if you want to email me, it's my name, Clare Haynes, Clare without an I, Haynes with a Y, at wildfire@work.co.uk.
Share that on the description box. It's been an absolute pleasure. Like, so many things that I will be able to apply as of right now, and that's what I liked about this interview. Like, you don't have to go away and let things sit and figure out from now. There are things that you can start to implement straight away. So I hope that whoever's listening will find what's touched you, or given you your own light bulb moment, and don't wait. Like, you've got one life to live, so make it as best as you can, and start implementing these lovely tips. So Claire, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so very much. I wish you a beautiful evening ahead, and we will connect soon. Take care. Thank you.